I'm joined once again by the creator, the BatX projection system that you should get for the MLB 2024 season. It's what I've used in DFS props and pick'em for the past, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years. It's Derek Carty. Derek, a lot of people ask me, they have the question, right? They haven't bet MLB props yet, right? They haven't done this. They haven't, maybe they do some sides and totals or whatever, but now they want to take it seriously. They ask, what are the best pitching props to bet? What should I be looking at? Because I think the number one the number one prop market in MLB is probably pitcher strikeouts. But what are the different types of pitcher props that people should be looking at the most? And which ones may have certain edges that people miss? And then the third thing we'll talk about is that how can people get confused that how the numbers being off in certain markets may not be the same as the proportion of what they're off in different markets. So the three-headed sword of pitcher props. It's not just K props, right?
No, it's not. As a general rule of thumb, the more popular a market is, generally the more efficient it is, and the harder it is to beat. But even though pitcher strikeouts are popular, I still think there's a lot of edge on pitcher strikeouts. I bet them myself. I've done well, but there are plenty of other markets that you can take advantage of, especially if you have a certain edge that is not necessarily related to strikeouts specifically. Like, let's say you think this guy's going to be on a pitch count today, which the bat projects. This guy's going to be on a pitch count. He's not going to be able to go as deep into the game. So maybe you're going to bet the under strikeouts. But maybe there's more value betting his under runs, under 1.5 earned runs plus 150, or his under walks, or his under hits. And a lot of times people can kind of get confused because it's like, all right, well, I think this guy is going to do poorly today, so I'm going to bet his under strikeouts. Why would I bet his under runs if I think he's going to do poorly? Well, it's like if you're playing it about volume, it doesn't matter because he might not get far enough into the game to give up enough runs. So like there are lots of ways to approach this. There's lots of markets that you can tackle. If you're playing on Prize Picks and underdogs, I love that they have a pitch count market that you can bet on. I wish traditional sports books would offer that. I've found those lines can be very off at times. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different angles you can take.
One of the things that I pay much attention to from someone that likes low variance, having a low variance betting portfolio, is that you mentioned before that if you're typically over strikeouts leads to like under earned runs, over pitching outs. Like a lot of it is correlated, right? And it's based on how deep is this guy going to go, right? Or is he going to get pulled early? Is he going to give up too many hits is his pitch count going to bloat? He's going to walk 4 guys early and then not be able to go 6 innings because he's going to reach 100 pitch count, before then. So what people may not realize is that when your bets are correlated to each other, you can't unless obviously you don't mind taking on the variance. You're essentially in basketball, for instance, if you're betting someone's over points, over rebounds, over assists, and then you're betting his over PRA, like that, they're correlated to each other. Like it's going to be very hard for you to win the PRA one without winning any of the P, the R, and the A, right? And baseball, it kind of works the same way. So for me, when I see edges that are much more related to how deep, where the edge on the under on 6 different categories shows as positive or over, that I'm much more likely to lower my bet size and increase my bet volume to go, hey, normally I would be betting $50 on one of these, right? Or 2 of these. And now that I've got 8 of them, I'm just going to do $20 across the board. And it's quite possible, since they're all correlated in some way, maybe I don't hit all 8, but maybe I'll hit 6 out of 8. And then when I lose, I don't necessarily lose all 8, but I'll still hit on 2 out of the 8, and it's for less money when they're all correlated. Now, when the pitching props are necessarily correlated, because over strikeouts and over walks allowed, dude, there are plenty of pitchers that Dylan Cease could strike out 10 and still walk 5, right? Like, it's not
Yeah.
like, I don't care about that type of stuff. But if you want to increase your variance and make more money betting that way, I know people will say SGPs, they're the devil. They're the devil. But to me, I view pitching SGPs, and you can mostly just do it on DraftKings. So it depends on the book and what you're allowed inside of an SGP to do. Is that if you go on Prize Picks or Underdog, you can't take the same pitcher twice, right? You can't. You would have to put that on different cards to take his over strikeouts, over this, under that, whatever. But on an SGP, like, a lot of times I find situations where, wow, it seems like the 2 best hitting edges and the 3 best pitching edges are in this same game. And I go, well, I'm going to bet these all individually, but I'm also going to bet them all together. And the payout of hitting all 5 in the SGP, like, way trumps like what I would get on Prize Picks or Underdog. Some of it due to the fact that the correlation isn't calculated properly in the SGP. And secondly, it's from an account health perspective, you look like more of a schmuck betting SGPs than you are hammering pitching outs and walks allowed props like this. So one thing to look at when it comes to pitching props is that if you're going to bet them straight across the board, don't bet 1% of your bankroll on 10 of the same pitching props. That's like betting 10% on the same thing. So you may win and lose a lot. Your variance goes up and down. And if you do want to do that without taking 1% of your bankroll times 10, just put that in an SGP. And of course, you have to get them all right, but if you calculate your edge should be ginormous for that in and of itself.
Yeah.
The other thing, I would assume you agree with that.
I do. Yeah. I mean, parlays are considered by really, really square bettors as being like the best and the most fun. And then like the moderately sharp bettors are like, no, you can't do parlays. But I think the really sharp bettors realize like you can, as long as you're making good plays and you're getting the right odds on it, you can actually do really well with them. And the whole account health thing is huge.
Last thing about pitching props, not all stat categories have the same distribution. So the reason why pitching props are the primary tool of most prop bettors is that most of these outcomes are closer to a normal distribution, which makes it much easier to project lines that are off and how much they're off by. What's the value of 1 strikeout? What's the value of 1 walk, 1 hit? When it comes to pitching outs, I wanted to ask you about this. The distribution of pitching outs is not normal.
No.
And some people get into situations, I call it the 6th inning problem. The way that baseball is played now, it incentivizes managers to keep pitchers in until the end of an inning. That, like, if you told me, Derek, that a pitching out prop was 9.5 versus 10.5, would that matter that much?
Very little.
Right, because the difference between the third, like, dude, if a normal starting pitcher, right, assuming that he's not one of these opener types, if he ends up pitching 3 innings, he probably ends up pitching 3.1 innings, right? Like,
Yeah.
like it's not that, like, that getting that, oh, I got an extra out for an extra 12 cents. Like, doesn't like they're the same, they're essentially the same outcome, right?
Yeah.
But once you start getting into that 6th inning, these outcomes get so ginormous, giant if you want to use that term, that there are so many outcomes that are between 15 and a half and 17 and a half, right? 15 and 18, that the price difference, it's like, oh, I'm getting under 17 and a half versus under 16 and a half. And I'm getting it and treating that as the same as like 6.5 strikeouts and 5.5 strikeouts. Like that is a recipe for
It is.
hurt.
You need to understand the way baseball games are played, how managers react, and the key numbers really for outs are 15 and 18, the 5th inning and the 6th inning. If you're betting an under, generally, you're more happy about getting the 15 and a half or the 18 and a half because the guy can finish the 5th or 6th inning and you win as long as he doesn't go back out for another one. But if you're betting a 14 and a half or a 17 and a half, if you're betting an under, he can't finish the inning. He's got to get pulled before that. Or if you're betting the over on it, well, he doesn't have to go out the next inning. He just has to finish that one. So it's not a linear kind of thing. The difference between 17 and a half and 18 and a half outs is much bigger than 16 and a half and 17 and a half.
And the same thing for 14 and a half and 15 and a half.
Yeah.
Right. Those are the key numbers. It's very similar thinking generally to in NFL, the 3 and a 7, right? Like those key numbers. Because you take a look at all the outcomes of NFL games, and so many land on a team winning by 3 or a team winning by 7, that if you looked at the distribution at 3 and 7, you'd see big spikes like that. So it's not going to be normally distributed. It's going to be kind of like pseudo double hump. I mean, it's going to have like a very weird type of distribution. The thing is, a lot of that is taken care of in the bat projections. If you go to evanalytics.com, right? If you get it there with their betting tools, like you're not going to be stuck in that scenario, right?
No, because the way it works at EV Analytics, you get the projected outs for the pitcher, and then you get the implied outs by the line, which is going to take into account how often the guy's going to go out for the next inning or is going to get pulled before that. And so you might see it might look weird. The implied projection on an 18 and a half might be like 20 outs or something because of just it's hard to go out into the 7th inning. It happens such a low percentage of the time that you'd need an average projection of 20 outs to actually get a median of 18 and a half. And so EV Analytics does that math for you, which is really nice.
Right. I would suggest people go to my previous video of why median versus mean projections matter. And this is right up the alley of, someone takes a look at that and goes, oh, that's obviously an overbet, right? Oh, it's at 20, it's at 18 and a half at 18 and a half at minus 130, right? And the projection is 20. It's like, you don't got enough. Like that is a losing bet.
Yeah.
Right? So people can get the bat X projections at EV Analytics as well as rotogrinders.com. And the thing I like about Rotogrinders is that you can just download the CSVs and do whatever the hell you want with them.
It's true.
Right? Your face says it all. Like, yeah, I kind of just like, yeah, here you go. And if you want to import that into anywhere, if you want to aggregate with other projections, I'm not suggesting necessarily that you do that, but I think one of the biggest features of the bat projections is that you offer percentile projections, you offer weekly projections, season long, tomorrow's for early projections for the next day. So if you're more advanced and you do like build your own model and you even want to compare your numbers or utilize some of the statistical projections from the bat in your own model, like it's not locked into the fact that I have to load a grid and scrape data and monitor stuff. It's like dude, like here's the CSV link. Go here, have fun. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's easy. It's easy if you know how to work with it.
And it's easy to use with EV analytics or unabated as
Yeah,
well.
it is.